The US is playing its games. Donald Trump has tried to corner India with a steep 50% tariffs threat. A US negotiating team which had to visit on August 25 to discuss the bilateral trade deal has now put off its visit with no new date being specified. The Alaska summit between Trump and Vladimir Putin has also not brought any good news for India so far. But Prime Minister Narendra Modi is not blinking. Instead, he's turning America's coercion into an opportunity, showcasing India's sovereign, multi-aligned foreign policy. This is the story of how Trump's Alaska summit with Putin ended up weakening America's Indo-Pacific strategy.
There's no deal until there's a deal. Thank you very much, Vladimir.
Next time in Moscow.
Hello viewers and welcome to this week's edition of Homework. This is your host Aman Sharma with CNN News 18. Trump's Alaska meeting. Well, on August 15, Donald Trump rolled out the red carpet for Vladimir Putin in Alaska. A full military ceremony, lavish praise, and yet no breakthrough. No ceasefire in Ukraine, no commitments from Moscow, just vague talks of progress. Putin walked away looking like Trump's equal, even triumphant. Trump, on the other hand, left with nothing tangible to show. But India was watching closely, because hidden in Trump's strategy was a dangerous message for New Delhi. Trump had already slapped a 25% tariff on Indian exports. He openly threatened secondary tariffs of 25% on countries buying Russian oil, calling India Russia's oil client. Trump also said his secondary tariffs could be devastating. But then he said maybe he won't have to impose them. To quote Mr. Trump, because of what happened today in Alaska, I think I don't have to think about it. I may have to think about it in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something, but we don't have to think about that right now.
What happened today, I think I don't have to think about that. Now, I may have to think about it in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something, but we don't have to think about that right now. I think the meeting went very well.
Looks positive, isn't it? Well, this makes it clear that Washington announcing an additional 25% tariff on Indian exports from August 27 for India buying Russian oil was to pressurize Putin into accepting a ceasefire. Trump thinks that targeting India will cut into Moscow's revenues and push it towards a compromise in Ukraine. India may not have wanted it like this, but it is now firmly tied to the geopolitics of war and peace in Ukraine. Interestingly, while the US wants to punish India for doing business with Russia, its own trade with Russia has gone up by 20% since Trump came to power. Putin himself said this in Alaska, quite the peak of hypocrisy when it comes to the US.
When the new administration came to power, bilateral trade started to grow. It's still very symbolic. Still, we have a growth of 20%. As I've said, we have a lot of dimensions for joint work.
For India, there's also billions in trade at stake. And yet, instead of capitulating, Modi is choosing a different path. India knows two things very clearly. Trump doesn't want a ceasefire. He wants a peace deal. Putin also wants the war to simply end, but on his terms, because he feels he's winning on the ground. India has skin in the game because of this secondary oil tariffs. For now, India has welcomed the Alaska meeting and the efforts to bring peace. The world wants to see an early end to the conflict in Ukraine, says India. Modi spoke to both Putin and Zelensky last week. His message, let's have a peaceful settlement of the conflict. A lot could change if the Russia-Ukraine war ends this month. Zelensky is already on his way to Washington to meet Trump on Monday. But Modi is also making counter moves. In his Independence Day speech on August 15th, Modi made it clear that he is standing like a wall against any harmful policy related to the farmers of India, the fishermen of India, and the cattle rearers of India. India will never accept any compromise, Modi said in a very, very clear message to Trump.
भारत अपने किसानों, अपने पशुपालकों, अपने मछुआरों के संबंध में कभी भी कोई समझौता नहीं स्वीकार करेगा.
Then just 3 days later, after Trump's Alaska spectacle, Modi is delivering his own message again. On August 18, the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has landed in India. Meetings with NSA Ajit Doval, talks with EAM Dr. S. Jaishankar, all carefully timed. It was a signal. India will not be bullied into abandoning its multi-alignment policy. Modi is keeping democratic partnerships alive with the West, but he is also showing that India's sovereignty cannot be compromised. It is also the Moscow axis. And the diplomatic chessboard didn't stop there. On August 24th, just days later, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar will be arriving in Moscow. His mission? To prepare the ground for the Modi-Putin 2025 summit in India. With Western sanctions squeezing Russia, India is playing a balancing act, securing discounted Russian crude for energy security, pushing ahead with joint defense projects, the S-400, the S-500 systems, and keeping doors open for dialogue with Washington at the same time. This was no coincidence. Ajit Doval had already been in Moscow weeks earlier.
We are very excited and delighted to learn about the visit of His Excellency the President Putin to India. The more important thing is this, that is, these summit meetings have always been the watershed points.
Modi's foreign policy machine works in layers, quietly, methodically, and strategically. Is it Trump's failure? Is it Putin's win? Well, let's be clear, Alaska was a win for Putin. He looked presidential, commanding, refusing to bend on Ukraine. Trump, he ended up almost losing India as an ally. By slapping tariffs on New Delhi, Trump has pushed India closer to Moscow and even opened doors for Beijing. What was meant to be economic coercion has clearly backfired. Instead of isolating Russia, America has alienated its most important Indo-Pacific partner, India. What it means for India? Well, for India, the challenge is real. The threat of secondary US tariffs still hangs over New Delhi. Energy security is tied to Russian oil. No deal in Alaska also leaves a dark cloud of uncertainty over India's trade negotiations with Washington. The US negotiating team that was supposed to be here on August 25th has postponed his visit. And yet, Modi is walking a fine line, keeping India's democratic values intact but refusing to be anyone's junior partner. This is the essence of the strategic autonomy of India. Look at the bigger picture. Even Fareed Zakaria warns that Trump may have made his biggest strategic blunder.
What Trump is doing is really reversing 25 years of bipartisan American foreign policy that saw a new strategic alliance with India as in the United States' vital national interest, both geopolitically and geoeconomically, to create diversity from China, lessen the dependence on China, develop a strong democratic ally at the heart of Asia.
For 25 years, America's bipartisanship policy nurtured India as a counterweight to China. Now, in one swoop, Trump is undoing decades of careful diplomacy. If Washington alienates India, the world's largest democracy may deepen ties with Russia and cautiously re-engage China. That could reshape the global balance of power. Fareed Zakaria says that even if Trump again reverses course, the damage has been done. Indians believe the United States has shown its true colors, its unreliability, and its willingness to treat its friends badly. They will understandably feel that to hedge their bets, India needs to stay close to Russia and even make amends with China. The country is united in its shock and anger at Trump's insulting behavior, says Fareed Zakaria. So what's the road ahead? Well, India is certainly not abandoning the US, but it is making one thing crystal clear. India will pursue multi-alignment. India will guard its sovereignty. And no tariff, no coercion, no external pressure will dictate its choices. This is Modi's message to Trump, to Putin, and to the world. India will stand firm and India will decide its own destiny. This is all for this week's edition of Homework. We will be back next week with much more.